Okay, once you got the cameras charged, we got to deal with the case. So in my timeline, this is the day before the dive. I've already probably loaded up my gear in the back of my truck, and I do this kind of late in the day, actually. So I wanted to point out these little plastic protection sheets that come on the lenses. For lack of true lens covers, these are the best you got. I'll talk about other ways to cover the lenses on the day of the dive. But when you're handling the case, you want to leave these things in place. They actually come off and go back on pretty easily, and they stick. I'm not sure how long they'll stick, but I'm going to use them as long as I've got them. That's what it is. So let's open it up. I like to start on the bottom. You just grab the latch and pull. Then I flip it over, grab the latch and pull, and the two halves just slide apart. Now inside, you've got the camera mount, and I'll talk about that in a minute. I'm just going to set it aside for now. In the other half, the camera comes with these little desiccant packets. Digital cameras tend to heat up. If there's any moisture in the case, it'll it'll go out into the air within the case, and it will condense on any cold surfaces. Now that could be the housing itself or the lenses, and the lenses will fog up if it densifies there. So these little desiccants are provided to suck up that moisture so it doesn't fog up your lenses. Now I've got a little thermometer, indoor-outdoor thermometer that records relative humidity. I'll stick a picture of it in here. I actually got it for work. And what I've found is below about 40-45% relative humidity, I generally don't have a problem. I have had problems with other cameras above about 60% relative humidity. So, now, we don't get much humidity. You'll see when I show the picture. It's pretty low today. But if you're traveling, you're someplace like Florida or tropics where you get a lot of humidity, things you can do are, if you can crack the case open in a air-conditioned environment, that's the best, because the air conditioning takes the moisture out of the air, and that'll dry it out. Other people have talked about, blowing clean dive air into the case. That's going to be tricky with this case because it's kind of tricky to put back together. But you could give it a try. You could even try opening and closing the case inside an air-conditioned vehicle. If you've got a van that you're diving from, that could work. That'll get you a low humidity. But push comes to shove, these are really good compared to the little paper tabs you use in GoPros. Now, mine's already mounted. They come with these little double-sided adhesive pads. You just stick one inside the case, and then you plop the desiccant pack on top of it. I don't know if you can see that. So there's that. All right, so the O-ring is what keeps your camera from turning into electronic rubbish. I don't lube it every time, but I inspect it every time. And so let's do that. So I've reached an age where a magnifying glass is very helpful. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to examine it very carefully and just have a look and wipe off any little bit of lint or anything that looks suspicious. Lint, hairs, cat hairs, sand, anything like that. You don't want that on your O-ring because it can compromise the seal. I've had a couple of GoPro floods. So, if I'm not going to lube the O-ring, that's it. I just proceed to closing it up. But for the purposes of this video, I'm going to go ahead and take the O-ring out and demonstrate lubing it. So the Vuze comes with this snazzy little pick. One thing that really helps in pulling the O-ring from the Vuze dive case is at the very bottom center of the slot, of the O-ring slot, there are a couple of notches. And these make it very easy to get the provided hook in and under and around the O-ring, making it very easy to pull out. Now, obviously I don't want to look at it. Now once it's out, I wipe down the table, but so this is a scary thing. Unless you're living in a in a clean room, any place you're at is liable to have dust on it, so you just don't know. But so once you got the O-ring out, you want to go ahead and inspect the groove. Make sure that it's clean. Now if it isn't, what do? I have used Q-tips, but they can shed lint too, so you got to inspect pretty carefully. It's darned if you do, darned if you don't kind of situation. But this is clean. The camera comes with this little packet of Molykote 111. The problem is, this is a single-use packet. No practical way to close it after that. I guess you could use a clothespin or something. You know, there's a good chance of that getting all over the place. Since I started with Nikonos 5s, I got a huge stash of this Nikonos 5 O-ring grease. I did some Googling, and it's not clear that this stuff is necessarily the right compound. So I went ahead and ordered some Molykote 111 on Amazon. Now, I wasn't paying attention when I ordered it, and so instead of getting a little tiny tube like this that'll last you years, I got this monster tube of this stuff. So I've got a lifetime supply. Anybody wants to lube their O-rings, look me up. You can come over and use it. So the O-rings are going to move around in the slot. They're going to adapt to the pressure. They're going to adapt to any non-uniformities in how they get shoved in when we put it back together. And that's good. They have to do that to adapt to the pressure changes. Now, they have to be lubricated and pliable when they do that. Now, you don't want much grease on here. You don't want to see, when you're done, it just wants to be a nice uniform light sheen. You don't want to see streaks of lubricant or anything like that. So it's you know, you don't want much on it. So you just put a little tiny bit on your fingers and you rub it around. Take a quick look. I want to make sure that when I'm handling it, I'm not transferring lint and other stuff from my hands onto it. Next, you just put it back in the case. Alright, you just put it in the slot. The slot is an odd little shape. It's kind of a, I didn't even know how to describe it. But you just slide it in and work your way around and get it fully seated into the case. And once it's as uniformly as you can, that's done. Now, you've done that, put it down, go wash your hands. You got grease on your fingers. If you start handling your cameras or anything else, you're going to get grease on that. I did that and I had fingerprints on my Vuze for a while. So I'm going to step away and I'm going to wash my hands really good with soap and water. So you can just, my hands are clean. Let's get going. So I'm just going to set this aside here. Now we want to attach the base plate to one of the cameras. So let's do, just for grins, let's do the Vuze Plus. The procedure is exactly the same for either camera. So you flip the camera over. There's a serial number on the bottom of the camera. You want that to show through the smaller of the two holes in the base plate. So that would be this one, not the big one. I think the logo shows through the big one. I don't know. You just put it into the tripod slot. Get it started. Line it up. And tighten her up. Don't need to break anything. You just don't want it to spin around. And yeah, the little Vuze logo is showing through the big hole. The serial number is showing through the small hole. All right. Once you've got the camera mounted on the base plate, before you shove it in, you should take a minute with one of these little microfiber cloths that come with it, and if necessary, wipe out, or take a good swab on the inside of the dome ports, because you're not going to be able to get to them again. They should be fine, but who knows? Dust could fall in there, and then wipe down. Take just a quick clean of all of the lenses on the Vuze camera. That done, you go ahead, you want to line up the switches on the camera itself and the switches on the case. You want to make sure that they line up, because if not, you're going to have to take it out and do it over again. You figure out how that's oriented, and then these little guides on the base plate have to engage with the guides on the bottom of the camera, or the bottom of the case. And that can be a little tricky to do, so you can just watch me fumble while I do it. All right, once you get it, you slide it in, and it goes in about halfway. You take the other half of the case, and you're doing the same thing. You're just lining up those guide slots. Once they get engaged, it slides together, and you can latch it shut. All right. So now, the next thing is, I'm going to go take it into the bathroom where I've got a bucket full of water. This is California. We got droughts, so we keep buckets of water around. And I'm going to test it. Okay, so I've taken the little protective covers off of the lenses, because I don't know how they hold up in the water, and I'm going to just go ahead and dunk the camera in this bucket of water and go away for an hour. We'll go have some lunch. Okay. I'll finish my lunch. Let's take this thing out of the bucket and make sure it's dry. I'm not seeing any problems. So we're going to start drying it off, and we'll go back to the kitchen table and finish this up. All right, well, we're going to keep drying these things off. I'm using these blue shop towels you can get at a lot of hardware stores. They are not truly lint-free, but they're pretty low lint. And they're pretty liquid proof. So assuming it's 100% dry, the next thing would be to put all the little protections back on the lenses. Again, I really wish we had decent lens caps available. Maybe somebody will 3D print something for us here. You probably don't need to have these on for transportation, but I'm going to be doing other things after we get to the dive site. So I just soon have these on and not have to remember to put them on later if I need them. So when this thing is all dry and protected, I'm going to put it back in the cloth case that comes with the Vuze case. All right. And then that's going to go into the Pelican case, and that is how I'm going to transport it to the dive site. Okay, nice and buttoned up safe. So, I'm not actually diving today, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go get my truck set up we'll go outside and I'll show you what I do on the day of the dive.